Dr. Valfred D. Sanguine's dental clinic sat between a vegan blood donation cafe and a 24-hour sunbed studio, two establishments no self-respecting vampire would normally tolerate. Naturally, the landlord had assumed Valfred was merely an oddball dentist with a flair for Gothic decor. And in fairness, that wasn't entirely wrong. Gargoyle-shaped water fountains lined the waiting room, the magazines were all editions of Eternal Grin Quarterly, and Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor drifted faintly through invisible speakers. What the landlord, the patients, and even Valfred's indefatigable receptionist Wendy did not know was that the clinic's owner was, indeed, a genuine vampire. What they also didn't know, because Valfred guarded it with the intensity of an insurance salesman on commission, was that he suffered from a peculiar condition no vampire should ever admit to. He fainted at the sight of blood. Vampires, traditionally, regard blood the way humans regard an all-inclusive buffet. Valfred, however, experienced blood the way humans experience unsolicited tax audits. Violent nausea followed by an urgent desire to black out. His grandsire, Count Nikolai the Relentless, had once tried to cure him by dunking him in a bathtub of O-negative like some perverse baptism. Valfred fainted, buoyed face down, and nearly drowned. After that, he vowed never again to confront more than a paper cut's worth of crimson at a time. So why dentistry? Simple. When you live in a world where vampire legends still surface on message boards, you need a day job, and medieval philosophy degrees don't pay for refrigerated plasma. Dentistry offered two irresistible advantages: lucrative clientele and convenient access to anesthetics. Also, and this was crucial, modern suction devices whisked away most blood before it could pool into a puddle of public humiliation. But there was one more problem: Valfred's fangs. Or rather, his lack thereof. Centuries of iron deficiency, long stories involving a lost bet and a monastery wine cellar had eroded them into cute, rounded nubs, more reminiscent of a hamster than a creature of the night. Any self-respecting vampire would have scheduled an immediate graft, but grafts involve incisions, which involve blood, which involve quoting life insurance rates from the floor while your receptionist fans you with old issues of Gums and Roses magazine. Thus, Valfred invented the Sanguine Smile Holofang Array, patented during a short-lived collaboration with a retired stage magician and a disgraced MIT engineer. The device was a tiny projector embedded behind his upper canines. When he smiled, laser-leveled holograms sprouted needle-sharp, luminescent fangs. They even emitted a faint hum, which Valfred insisted was just for atmosphere. The holograms fooled humans so thoroughly that even dentists at professional conferences asked about his bone dexity regimen. Everything had gone splendidly for decades until the Wednesday of the Great Pomegranate Incident. It began like any other Wednesday. Wendy greeted patients with the boundless cheer of someone whose coffee is secretly laced with peppermint schnapps. Valfred adjusted his bow tie blood-red silk, obviously, and double-checked that his hollow fang array was fully charged. His first patient, Mrs. Grackle, entered complaining about a chipped molar. Now, Mrs. Grackle was a former opera singer whose mouth opened wider than most bank vaults. This ordinarily wouldn't be an issue except her gums bled at the slightest provocation, and opera singers, by genetic mandate, must describe all sensations at mezzo forte. One little flick of the scaler, and she's turning into Niagara Falls, Wendy muttered as she prepped the tray. Valfred swallowed an ice cube of anxiety. Suction. Maximum suction, he whispered like a mantra. Mrs. Grackle reclined in the chair, still regaling them with tales of her 1983 debut as Carmen. The moment Valfred's mirror touched her gum line, a scarlet bubble blossomed forth. The assistant young Jeremy hired strictly for his ability to hold a hose and not ask questions, lunged with the suction tube. Unfortunately, Jeremy had been binge-watching cooking shows, distracted by thoughts of beurre blanc, and hesitated for a lethal 2-second delay. Valfred glimpsed the blood. His vision tunneled. The holographic fangs flickered like a low-battery flashlight. Mrs. Grackle's aria rose to a high C, and with the grace of a Victorian fainting goat, Dr. Valfred D. Sanguine collapsed backward, limbs pinwheeling, knocking over a tray of dental picks that rained onto the tiled floor like metallic hail. When he came to, Wendy was spritzing his face with eucalyptus mist. Boss, you've got to stop taking power naps during procedures. Patients get ideas. Valfred blinked at Mrs. Grackle, who fortunately assumed the commotion was a new relaxation technique. I'll send you home with a desensitizing toothpaste, he croaked, struggling to his feet, holographic teeth rebooting with a faint chirp. He survived the rest of the morning by assigning Jeremy to aggressive suction duty, which consisted of standing guard beside each patient like a zealous mosquito, hose forever inches from the gingiva. No more fainting spells, though several patients left drenched when Jeremy confused gingival oozing with ordinary saliva. Everything might have returned to equilibrium were it not for Randall P. Thistlewhite, Esquire, a corporate lawyer whose favorite hobbies included flossing in public and litigating parking tickets. Randall arrived clutching a grocery bag of pomegranate seeds. I read on the internet that chewing these polishes enamel, he announced, scattering crimson seeds across the lobby. Figured I'd prep my teeth before my whitening session. Valfred paled. Pomegranate seeds, when chewed, resemble a mouthful of newly minted bullet holes. He shot Wendy a desperate glance. Wendy responded with her standard two-step triage. 1. Slam the schedule book shut. 2. Slap on a smile that said, "We're definitely not making this policy up on the spot." Mr. Thistlewhite, she said sweetly, per clinic guidelines, we require a pre-procedural rinse to neutralize sugars. Policies. Randall rolled his eyes but complied, gargling vigorously. Rinse completed, Randall reclined in the chair, lips stained a faint red that made him look like a toddler post-Kool-Aid. Valfred approached with whitening tray and trembling hand. To his relief, Randall's gums were pristine. Then, Randall bit his tongue. Hard. It began as a tiny nick, but tongues bleed like overzealous fountains, and this one must have taken advanced courses in dramatic arts. A red torrent splashed onto the bib, formed rivulets down Randall's chin, and splattered the overhead lamp in a pattern reminiscent of modernist squirrel art. Valfred's vision shrank to a pinhole. Reflexively, he tried activating dark mode in his brain, but the LMS running his panic response glitched. The hollow fangs surged into high brightness, perhaps misinterpreting adrenaline as a user command. He swayed, knocked a rolling stool across the room, and face-planted straight into Randall's lap. When he regained consciousness, he was sprawled on the floor, his phantom fangs flickering like disco strobes. Wendy waved away Jeremy, who was gamely fanning Valfred with a pamphlet titled, "Scaling in You, Plaque's Worst Nightmare." Randall, meanwhile, sat upright, holding a wad of gauze to his tongue, texting furiously. 1-star Yelp review. Fainted dentist. Possible vampire cosplay. Unacceptable, Valfred groaned. A single 1-star review could sink him faster than holy water. He needed damage control, stat. Mr. Thistlewhite, he croaked. Today's procedure is on the house, plus complimentary night guards for your, litigious molars. The lawyer paused in mid-tweet. Night guards retail at $400? Custom molded, UV cured, Valfred confirmed, hoping UPS wouldn't mind a last-minute kidney sale. Randall pocketed his phone. I suppose accidents happen. Carry on. Wendy wiped imaginary sweat from her brow, but as Randall exited, he added, By the way, I'm hosting a charity gala tonight. Black tie, open bar, live auction for endangered arachnids. We could use a sponsor. How about Sanguine Smiles Dentistry provide complimentary whitening gift cards for attendees? Valfred's optic nerves twitched. Charity gala meant crowds. Crowds meant canopies. Canopies meant possible toothpicks and subsequently possible emergency dental requests. Also, endangered spiders, notoriously bitey. But refusing a lawyer in social plumage carried nuclear risk. Delighted, Valfred said, his voice doing somersaults. We'll be there. The moment Randall left, Wendy marched into his office. Boss, I love you like the eccentric uncle my parents warned me about, but this has to stop. I know, Valfred sighed. He slumped into his leather chair, which moaned like a dying walrus. I'm a vampire who faints at blood, a dentist who can't handle gingivitis, and my fangs are glorified PowerPoint presentations. The lights flickered as if empathizing. Wendy perched on his desk, scattering gum probes. Confess, you're not just dramatic, are you? You're actually, literally, a vampire. Valfred stared, mouth ajar. His holographic canines phased in and out like radio towers searching for a signal. I've managed your schedule for 6 years, she continued. You block holidays around lunar eclipses, your lunch smoothies arrive in labeled plasma pouches, and you never show up for the staff beach picnic because, quote, the sun and I are frenemies? He swallowed dust. All right, guilty. Wendy clapped once. Knew it. Look, I don't care. My mother's been a practicing Wiccan for decades. She once dated a Wero Llama. But if we're going to survive tonight's gala, we need a plan. Plan, Valfred echoed, chewing his lower lip. Yes. A plan that avoids blood, prevents fainting, shields my secret, and appeases a room full of wealthy donors. Easy. They devised Operation Fandango in 3 phases. Phase 1, fortify Valfred's tolerance via exposure therapy, but using ketchup, because tomato paste doesn't trigger vasovagal syncope. Jeremy volunteered to squirt streams of ketchup across dental bibs while Valfred practiced breathing exercises. After the 3rd squirt, Jeremy slipped on the linoleum, launching a ketchup geyser that hit the ceiling vent. Valfred remained conscious, though he did recite the Latin alphabet backward, which Wendy deemed progress. Phase 2, Holofang Upgrade. Wendy contacted the disgraced MIT engineer Dr. Lennox, who had since migrated to holographic lawn ornaments. For a modest fee, 3 bottles of AB positive and lifetime sunbed vouchers, Lennox installed a stability patch that prevented flickering during power surges. The fangs now glowed with theater-quality consistency. Like IMAX in your mouth, Lennox bragged. Phase 3, Social Rehearsal. They filled the waiting room with cardboard cutouts, purchased from a closing cinema superheroes, space pirates, a disturbingly swole Santa, and practiced cocktail chatter. Valfred circulated with a tray of hors d'oeuvres shaped like molars, while Wendy shouted random gala phrases. What a lovely endowment. I adore your cufflinks. No, I don't sparkle in sunlight. That's libel. By 7 p.m., Valfred felt marginally less doomed. The gala took place at the Pinnacle Hotel Ballroom, a space so opulent it had imported chandeliers from actual castles and a carpet pattern rumored to induce vertigo in rival bidders. Wendy wore a crimson jumpsuit that matched Valfred's bow tie, so onlookers assumed they coordinated intentionally, rather than both grabbing the only clean laundry that morning. Immediately, Valfred noticed 3 alarming details. 1. The hors d'oeuvres were all skewered with tiny pirate sword toothpicks. Broken gums waiting to happen. 2. The open bar featured Bloody Mary fountains, literal chocolate fondue-style fountains but with tomato juice, vodka, and floating olives shaped like eyeballs. 3. Randall P. Thistlewhite held court near the stage, gloating like a man who recently discovered floss threaders right off his medical expenses. Stick to seltzer, Wendy whispered, steering Valfred away from the fountains. And keep your suction straw close. Valfred, now addicted to the psychological comfort of saliva suction, had rigged a discreet portable unit disguised as a vape pen. It emitted a soft whir every time he pressed the button, which passersby believed was avant-garde aromatherapy. Things proceeded smoothly for 15 minutes. Valfred chatted with a biotech investor about enzymes, complimented an elderly donor's brooch shaped like mitochondria, and bid on a silent auction gift basket of fair trade flaw. He even managed to endure the sight of a young financier gnawing on a cocktail sword until his gum bled. Valfred simply looked away and imagined cats stuck in trees. Then came the spider auction. On a velvet pedestal sat Ermintrude, a rare blue-kneed tarantula known to secrete mildly anticoagulant venom. Randall brandished the spider's terrarium with theatrical flair. Opening bid, $1,000, proceeds toward the Arachnid Opera House Initiative. A hushed murmur rippled. Nobody wanted a pet spider that might redecorate their living room with webbed frescoes. Randall, sensing waning enthusiasm, raised the stakes. Our generous sponsor, Dr. Sanguine, has agreed to include complimentary full-service dental whitening for the lucky winner. Valfred's holographic fangs glitched in outrage before the stability patch reasserted control. Wendy nudged him. Smile and wave. He smiled, waved, and prayed no one noticed his knuckles were wide enough to audition for powdered donut rolls. Suddenly, a busboy stumbled into the pedestal, jostling the terrarium. The lid popped open like a jack-in-the-box, and Ermintrude scuttled along the tablecloth with surprising velocity. Guests shrieked, champagnes fizzed over, and one hedge fund manager demanded hazard pay. Under normal circumstances, vampires possess lightning reflexes. Alas, Valfred's reflexes were running Windows 95 due to adrenaline overload. When Ermintrude launched herself toward the centerpieces, Valfred did what any heroic dentist would do, screamed a note high enough to repair satellite dishes, and leapt onto the appetizer table, flipping it over and showering the floor with Capriski skewers. The tarantula, unfazed, crawled up the trouser leg of a foreign dignitary who promptly fainted. Amid the chaos, Randall grabbed a microphone. "Remain calm. We simply need an arachnid handling expert." Everyone turned to Dr. Sanguine, erroneously believing medical practitioners possess universal wildlife skills. Wendy squeezed his elbow. "You got this. Spider capture, 0 blood. Easy. But what if it bites? Worst case, you faint. People assume compassion overload." He inhaled deeply. The scent of tomato vodka fountains mingled with fierce sweat, forming a cocktail of repulsion that somehow grounded him. He spotted Ermintrude, now perched on a decorative gargoyle sconce as sinister, but reachable. Swallowing dread, he rummaged in his satchel and produced a small plastic mouthguard case. "Here, spider," he whispered, as if coaxing a skittish cat. Guests jostled for phone footage. Valfred climbed a chair, then onto a side table, stretching toward the gargoyle. He opened the mouthguard case, emitting a faint lavender scent because Wendy insisted all cases be pre-spritzed for brand experience. Ermintrude, perhaps lured by lavender or simply confused, toddled forward. Valfred closed the case gently, securing the spider. Applause erupted. The blue-kneed tarantula was safe, the gallows attendees were safe, and, miraculously, no one was bleeding. Randall, ever the showman, reclaimed the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, our courageous sponsor, a true paragon of dentistry and valor." Flashbulbs burst. Someone shouted, "Show us your fangs for the camera." Valfred had never publicly displayed his teeth outside clinical settings, but adrenaline had given him momentum, and momentum is peer pressure's cousin. He flashed his widest grin. The holographic fangs glimmered under chandelier light like twin sabers of dental justice. The crowd gasped, part awe, part alarm. A tabloid reporter pushed forward. "Are those glowing?" Before Valfred could fabricate a marketing spiel, Wendy swooped. "Yes! Cutting-edge luminiferous enamel overlays. FDA pending. Dr. Sanguine pioneers them for nighttime visibility essential for after-dark floss safety." The room murmured appreciation. After-dark floss safety sounded just absurd enough to be credible. The reporter scribbled furiously, eager to break the next big trend. Randall cleared his throat. "Well, bidding resumes at—" A high-pitched squeal interrupted as the foreign dignitary, revived, noticed a small cut on his elbow, probably sustained during the fainting fiasco. A single bead of blood rolled downward in cinematic slow motion, straight into Valfred's line of sight. "O treacherous fate?" The bead glistened under spotlight, magnified in Valfred's hyperacute vision until it resembled a crimson planet. His knees buckled. Wendy darted forward, but too late. He swayed. The suction vape tumbled from his pocket and activated mid-air, spraying lavender mist, and he crashed onto a table laden with amaretto cream puffs. Pastry shrapnel flew, and once again, Dr. Sanguine pirouetted into unconsciousness. When he awoke, he was backstage lying on an ice pack of frozen shrimp. Wendy sat nearby, scrolling headlines. "Local dentist tackles tarantula. Tests tooth tech." "The good news," she said, "is you're a hero. The bad news? Everyone thinks your fangs are battery-powered dental highlighters. Orders already pouring in." Valfred exhaled. "I can't keep living like this, Wendy. My life is a telenovela written by orthodontic interns." She closed the tablet. "Then change the script. Go public well. Semi-public. You can't admit you're undead, but you can launch luminous fang veneers. Make fainting part of your branding. Call it empathy dentistry. We feel your pain so deeply we pass out." He blinked. It was audacious, ridiculous, borderline genius. Over the next weeks, Sanguine Smiles rebranded. The reception area now sported posters featuring Valfred mid-swoon, captioned, "We care too much." The Hollow Fang tech became Sanguine Glow veneers, marketed for clubbers, spelunkers, and cat owners sick of tripping in the dark. Naturally, each veneer came with a disclaimer, not for actual biting. Orders flooded in from tech bros, pop stars, and one reclusive billionaire who wanted his guard dogs to have them. As for Velfred's blood phobia, Wendy enrolled him in therapy with Dr. Eileen Hemsworth, a psychologist specializing in squeamish vampires. Progress was slow but measurable. He now only fainted at nosebleeds, rated 7 or higher on the Hemsworth scale. During practice drills, he could watch an entire slasher movie trailer before his eyelids fluttered like malfunctioning blinds. The fainting remained part of his charm. Patients found it comforting to know their dentist empathized viscerally. Yelp reviews skyrocketed from 3.8 stars to a dazzling 4.9, with comments such as, "Best cleaning ever, dentist passed out so I got extra fluoride time," and "Their lavender suction vape smells like courage." On alternate Wednesday nights, the clinic hosted Spookless Support, a group for supernatural beings with inconvenient handicaps, claustrophobic mummies, allergic werewolves, ADHD poltergeists. They sat in the waiting room sipping herbal blood substitutes and sharing coping tips. The blue-kneed tarantula, now rechristened Flossie, resided in a terrarium behind the desk, her presence oddly comforting. One evening after the final appointment, Valfred stood before the bathroom mirror manually flossing while the hollow fangs hovered perfectly in sync. He no longer felt embarrassment watching the projection. Instead, he saw a symbol of adaptation, of owning one's flaws with neon bravado. Wendy entered, carrying 2 mugs of synthetic cocoa. "To weird solutions for weirder problems," she toasted. He clinked his mug against hers. "To the finest receptionist turned crisis architect a fainting vampire could ask for." They sipped, comfortable in the glow of malfunctioning fluorescent lights. Outside, the vegan blood donation cafe still bustled, and the sunbed studio hummed, blissfully ignorant that between them thrived the most unusual dental practice on Earth 1, where the dentist might swoon at your tartar, but he'd do it with style, holographic fangs gleaming like cosmic nightlights. Somewhere in the lobby, Flossie plucked a cricket from her dish, and the gargoyle fountains burbled approvingly. The world, Valfred decided, was finally, splendidly, hilariously right.